Chapter 11 of Triplanetary. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain and is read by Mark Smith of Simpsonville, South Carolina. Triplanetary by E. Smith. Chapter 11. Roger Carries On. For Gray Roger had not perished in the floods of Nevian energy which had destroyed his planetoid, while those terrific streamers of force emanating from the crimson obscurity surrounding the amphibian spaceship were driving into his defensive screens. Roger sat impassive and immobile at his desk. His hard, gray eyes moved methodically over his instruments and recorders, and after a few minutes he smiled coldly, while an expression of relief struggled fleetingly to move his expressionless face. Even though his screens were better than anyone had supposed, why admit it? Baxter, Hartkopf, Chatelier, Andrusung, Penrose, Nishimura, Mirsky. He called off a list of names. Report to me here at once. The planetoid is lost, he informed his select group of scientists when they had assembled, and we must abandon it in exactly 15 minutes, which will be the time required for the robots to fill this first section with our most necessary machinery and instruments. Pack each of you one box of the things he most wishes to take with him, and report back here in not more than 13 minutes. Say nothing to anyone else. They filed out calmly, and as they passed out into the hall, Baxter, perhaps a trifle less case-hardened than his fellows, at least voiced the thought for those they were so brutally deserting. I say, it seems a bit thick to dash off this way and leave the rest of them, but still, I suppose—
You'll suppose correctly.
Bland and heartless Nishimura filled in the pause.
A small part of the planetoid may be able to escape, which, to me at least, is pleasantly surprising news. It cannot carry all of our men and mechanisms. Therefore, only the most important of both are saved. What would you? For the rest, it is simply what you call the fortune of war, no?
But the beautiful— began the amorous Chatelier. Hush, fool! Snorted Hartkopf. One word of that to the ear of Roger, and you too are left behind. Of such non-essentials the universe is full, to be collected in times of ease, but in times hard to be disregarded. Und this is a time of Schrecklichkeit indeed.
The group broke up, each man going to his own quarters, to meet again in the first section a few minutes before the zero time. Roger's office was now packed so tightly with machinery and supplies that but little room was left for the scientists. The gray monstrosity still sat unmoved behind his dials.
But of what use is it, Roger?
The Russian physicist demanded.
Those waves are of some ultra-band, of a frequency immensely higher than anything heretofore known. Our screens should not have stopped them for an instant. It is a mystery that they have held so long, and certainly this single section will not be permitted to leave the planetoid without being destroyed.
There are many things you do not know, Mirsky, came the cold and level answer. Our screens, which you think are of your own devising, have several improvements of my own in the formulae, and would hold forever had I the power to drive them. The screens of this section, being smaller, can be held as long as will be found necessary.
Power? The dumbfounded Russian exclaimed. Why, we have almost infinite power, unlimited, sufficient for a lifetime of high expenditure.
But Roger made no reply, for the time of departure was at hand. He pressed down a tiny lever, and a robot in the power room threw in the gigantic plunger switches which launched against the Nevians the stupendous beam which so upset the complacence of Narado the amphibian, the beam into which was poured recklessly every resource of power afforded by the planetoid, careless alike of burnout and of exhaustion. Then all the attention of the Nevians and the greater part of their power output devoted to the neutralization of that last desperate thrust. The metal wall of the planetoid opened, and the first section shot out into space. Full driven as they were, Roger's screens flared white as he drove through the temporarily lessened attack of the Nevians, but in their preoccupation the amphibians did not notice the additional disturbance, and the section tore on, unobserved and undetected. Far out in space, Roger raised his eyes from the instrument panel and continued the conversation as though it had not been interrupted. "Everything is relative, Mirsky, and you have misused gravely the term unlimited. Our power was, and is, very definitely limited. True, it then seemed ample for our needs, and is far superior to that possessed by the inhabitants of any solar system with which I am familiar. But the beings behind that red screen, whoever they are, have sources of power as far above ours as ours are above those of the Solarians." "How do you know?" "That power, what is it?" "We have the analyses of those fields recorded," came simultaneous questions and explanations. "Their power source is very probably the interatomic energy of iron, and if so, much remains to be done before I can proceed with my plan. I must have the most powerful structure in the known universe before I can act. In the light of what I have just learned, the loss of the planetoid is but a trifle." Roger, as unmoved as one of his own automatons, was coldly analyzing the situation, thinking the thing through to its logical conclusion, paying no attention whatever to the losses of life, time, and treasure now behind him. "But what can you do about it?" growled the Russian. "Many things. From the charts of the recorders we can compute their fields of force, and from that point it is only a step to their method of liberating the energy. We shall build robots. They shall build other robots, who shall in turn construct another planetoid. One this time that, wielding the theoretical maximum of power, will be suited to my needs." "And where will you build it? We are marked. Invisibility now is useless. Triplanetary will find us, even if we take up an orbit beyond that of Pluto." "We have already left your Solarian system far behind. We are going to another system, one far enough removed so that the spy rays of Triplanetary will never find us, and yet one that we can reach in a reasonable length of time with the energies at our command. Some 15 days will be required for the journey, however, and our quarters are cramped. Therefore make places for yourselves wherever you can, and lessen the tedium of those 15 days by working upon whatever problems are most pressing in your respective researches." The grey monster fell silent, immersed in what thoughts no one knew, and the scientists set out to obey his orders. Baxter, the British chemist, followed Penrose, the lantern-jawed, saturnine American engineer and inventor, as he made his way to the furthermost cubicle of the section. "I say, Penrose, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind." "Go ahead. Ordinarily, it's dangerous to be a cackling hen anywhere around him, but he can't hear anything here now. His system is pretty well shot to pieces. You want to know all I know about Roger?" "Exactly so. You have been with him so much longer than I have, you know. In some ways, he impresses one as being scarcely human, if you know what I mean. Ridiculous, of course, but of late I have been wondering whether he really is human. He knows too much, about too many things. He seems to be acquainted with many solar systems, to visit which would require lifetimes. Then, too, he has dropped remarks which would imply that he actually saw things that happened long before any living man could possibly have been born. Finally, he looks, well, peculiar, and certainly does not act human. I have been wondering, and have been able to learn nothing about him. As you have said, such talk as this aboard the planetoid was impossible." "You needn't worry about being paid your price, that's one thing. If we live, and that was part of the agreement, you know, we will all get what we sold out for. You will become a belted earl. I have already made millions, and shall make many more. Similarly, Chatelier has had and will have his women, and Andrasung and Nishimura their cherished revenges, Hartkopf his power, and so on." He eyed the other speculatively, then went on. I might as well spill it